There is a plant that outperforms coffee and every energy drink on the market. 3 natural stimulants in a single leaf, 6 hours of clean energy, 0 crash, 0 jitters. 200 million people drink it every day. You were never told its name. By the end of this video, you will know what it is, why a $25 billion industry needs you to never find out, and how to grow it yourself. Walk through the streets of Buenos Aires on any given morning. Watch the people around you. The woman on the bus cradling a hollowed gourd in one hand and a thermos tucked under her arm. The construction workers passing a single cup between them at a dusty job site in San Telmo. The office worker at her desk with a metal straw rising from a small wooden vessel filled with crushed green leaves. You will see this everywhere. On park benches in Palermo, at football matches in La Bombonera Stadium, in hospital waiting rooms, in university lecture halls. Over 90% of Argentine households consume this plant every single day. Cross the river into Uruguay, and the number reaches 80% of the entire national population. Uruguayans drink roughly 10 kilograms per person per year. To put that in perspective, that is higher than the weight of coffee consumed per capita in almost any country on Earth. This is not a supplement. This is not a wellness trend. This is breakfast, lunch, dinner, and everything between. The ritual works like this. Someone fills a small gourd 2/3 full with dried crushed leaves. They insert a metal filtering straw called a bombilla. They pour hot water over the leaves. They sip, they refill, they pass the gourd to the next person in the circle. The same leaves get re-steeped 10 to 15 times before the flavor fades. One gourd circles a group for hours. Friends share it, strangers share it, workers share it with their bosses. The gourd does not care about your title or your salary. When it passes from hand to hand, hierarchy disappears. It is the opposite of a paper coffee cup with your name misspelled on the side. And here is something most people never learn. In the 1800s, Syrian and Lebanese immigrants traveled to Argentina seeking opportunity. They found work, they found community, and they found this drink. When they returned home or sent word back to their families, they carried the habit with them across the Atlantic. Walk through the old city of Damascus today and you will find vendors selling loose yerba mate by the kilogram in the same souks where spices have been traded for 1,000 years. Families in the coastal city of Latakia gather on balconies at sunset and pass the gourd exactly the way Argentine families do on the other side of the world. The ritual survived the journey intact. Today, Syria is the 5th largest consumer of this plant on Earth. Lebanon follows close behind. A drink born in the forests of South America crossed oceans, crossed religious boundaries, crossed languages, and planted itself permanently in Middle Eastern daily life. And still, most North Americans and Europeans have never even encountered it. The Guarani people of present-day Paraguay were the first to cultivate this plant. They called it ca. That word simply means herb, as though no other herb mattered enough to need its own name. The world now calls it yerba mate. Guarani warriors drank it before long journeys through dense subtropical forest for sustained endurance. Shamans prepared it during ceremonies of purification and spiritual focus. The plant was not food alone. It carried sacred weight. It connected communities to the forest and to each other across generations. Guarani communities traded dried leaves along river networks that stretched across what is now Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. The plant functioned as a form of currency between villages separated by hundreds of miles of forest. Mothers prepared cold infusions for children during the humid summer months. Elders carried pouches of dried leaves on every journey as essential as water itself. For centuries before any European ship ever touched the coast of South America, yerba mate was already woven into every layer of Guarani daily life. Then the Spanish arrived. In the 1500s, colonizers watched the Guarani prepare and drink mate around open fires in forest clearings, and they recoiled. They called it the devil's drink because of its deep connection to indigenous spiritual practice. Catholic authorities in Asunción moved to ban it. The ban failed completely. The plant was too essential, too embedded in the culture, too effective at sustaining energy through brutal physical labor. Within a few decades, the Spanish settlers themselves were drinking it every single day. By the mid-1700s, every social class in the colony consumed mate without exception. Soldiers, merchants, governors, priests, the men who banned it became its most devoted consumers. Colonial trade records describe yerba mate as more essential than bread in certain provinces. Mule caravans hauled dried leaves hundreds of miles across the Chaco lowlands to meet demand. In Buenos Aires, households spent more on yerba mate than on meat or grain. The plant had become the economic backbone of entire towns. Fortunes rose and fell on its supply. Conflicts erupted over access to the wild groves deep in the forests of Misiones and Alto Paraná. The Jesuits saw the demand and recognized the opportunity. Starting in the 1650s, Jesuits became the first Europeans to successfully domesticate yerba mate in organized plantations across the region. And the reason no one else had managed it came down to a single biological secret. Yerba mate seeds will not germinate under normal conditions. In the wild, they often require passage through the digestive system of birds to soften the hard seed coat. The Jesuits discovered how to replicate this cleaning and soaking process through years of trial and error. They told absolutely no one. At their peak, the Jesuit missions operated over 30 reductions across present-day Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. Thousands of Guarani workers tended endless rows of young yerba mate trees in cleared forest plots. The dried leaves were packed into leather bundles weighing 60 kilograms each and carried on the backs of indigenous laborers along narrow jungle trails to river ports on the Paraná. From there, the cargo shipped downstream to Buenos Aires and onward to buyers across the continent. They built vast plantations on indigenous land using indigenous labor. They controlled the seed supply. They controlled the growing knowledge. The plant, they once condemned as satanic, became their single most profitable export across all of South America. Europeans began calling it Jesuit tea. The monks made fortunes. The Guarani, who had cultivated it for centuries, made nothing. In 1767, the Spanish crown expelled the Jesuits from South America. The plantations collapsed almost overnight. The carefully guarded cultivation knowledge disappeared with the missionaries who held it. Wild harvesting returned as the only option. The domesticated groves were abandoned. The plant went feral again. It receded back into the forests of Paraguay, Brazil, and Argentina. For the next several decades, the region relied entirely on wild harvesting. Cultivation knowledge was lost until successful plantations finally re-emerged at the end of the 19th century. During that exact gap, coffee consolidated its global dominance. Plantations expanded through colonial Kenya, Indonesia, Colombia, and Brazil. The trade routes locked in, the cultural habits cemented, the roasting infrastructure, the shipping networks, the cafe culture of Europe, all of it built around coffee during the century when yerba mate simply was not available. By the time mate finally had a functioning supply chain again, the global stimulant market had already crowned its king. By the early 1900s, coffee had branded packaging on store shelves across Europe. It had dedicated cafes in every capital city, from Vienna to Paris to London. It had an entire global commodity exchange built around its price. Yerba mate had none of that. No marketing infrastructure, no brand recognition outside South America, no seat at the table where global beverage trade was negotiated. Now here is what modern chemistry eventually discovered inside this leaf. Yerba mate contains nearly 200 distinct chemical compounds, giving it an incredibly complex flavor profile and chemical makeup. Among those compounds are vitamins A, C, and E, and several B vitamins. Minerals include calcium, magnesium, iron, phosphorus, and selenium. There are 15 amino acids, flavonoids, polyphenols, and chlorophyll. The leaf is not merely a stimulant, it is closer to a complete nutritional system growing on a branch. The dominant antioxidant in yerba mate is chlorogenic acid. The same compound found in green coffee beans before roasting destroys most of it. Yerba mate delivers roughly 176 milligrams of polyphenols per gram of dried leaf. That is approximately triple the concentration found in green tea. The total antioxidant activity of yerba mate exceeds that of green tea, coffee, and virtually every other antioxidant beverage ever tested. The polyphenol profile is not just deeper, it is broader, with more types of protective compounds working across more biological pathways at the same time. But the real secret is in how the energy works. This is the part that changes everything. Yerba mate does not operate on caffeine alone. It contains 3 separate stimulant compounds working in concert. The first is caffeine. It drives alertness and sharpens focus. Every energy drink on the market relies on this single molecule and nothing else. The second compound is theobromine. This is the same molecule that gives dark chocolate its warm, smooth, sustained feeling of focus without anxiety. Theobromine dilates blood vessels, it improves circulation, and it provides gentle, lasting energy without overstimulating the central nervous system. Coffee does not contain theobromine in any meaningful amount. Energy drinks contain none at all. The third compound is theophylline. It relaxes smooth muscle tissue and opens airways. It supports deeper, easier breathing. Your body gets more oxygen with less effort. 3 stimulants in one leaf. Caffeine for the spark, theobromine for the sustain, theophylline for the calm. Together they produce a slow, modulated energy curve that lasts 4 to 6 hours. No spike, no crash, no jitters, no anxious heart rate at 2 in the afternoon. The chlorogenic acids in the leaf slow caffeine absorption even further, stretching the effect and softening the onset. Coffee delivers 1 stimulant in a concentrated burst. An energy drink delivers synthetic caffeine alongside sugar and chemicals designed to mask the harshness. Yerba mate delivers 3 natural stimulants in a balanced wave. This is why 200 million people drink it daily and none of them need a second cup to survive the afternoon. If it does all of this, the question is not whether it works. The question is why you have never heard of it. The United States energy drink market alone surpassed $25 billion in 2024. Globally, energy and sports drink revenue reached roughly $208 billion that same year. Walk down the beverage aisle of any gas station in America, rows of aluminum cans lined up in refrigerated cases, synthetic caffeine, taurine, artificial colors, processed sugars or artificial sweeteners, proprietary blends printed on the label in fonts too small to read, designed to hide what is actually inside the can. Emergency room visits linked to energy drink overconsumption have climbed steadily for more than a decade. Bright-colored cans with lightning bolts and aggressive branding line every checkout counter and vending machine from coast to coast. Marketing budgets behind these products run into the billions. Sponsorship deals with athletes and influencers sell the idea that synthetic stimulants fuel peak human performance. Meanwhile, a single UN-processed leaf that outperforms all of them sits unnoticed on a bottom shelf in the international foods aisle of your local grocery store. Coffee dominates the global hot beverage market with infrastructure built across centuries. It achieved that dominance during the exact 120-year window when yerba mate had no commercial supply chain. That was not coincidence. It was timing. Coffee plantations expanded through colonial Africa and Southeast Asia, while yerba mate sat wild and unharvested in remote South American forests. The infrastructure followed the profit. The culture followed the infrastructure. The consumer followed the culture. Now consider what yerba mate threatens. A plant that provides 3 stimulants simultaneously, higher antioxidant capacity than coffee or green tea. A plant that can be brewed with nothing but hot water and a gourd. No capsules required, no extraction technology, no proprietary formulas, no synthetic additives, no aluminum cans, and no factories. A farmer with a single tree and a kettle produces what a multinational corporation packages and sells for $4 a can. The research gap tells the rest of the story. Studies on coffee and energy drink ingredients vastly outnumber studies on yerba mate in Western medical databases. The mate research that does exist comes primarily from Argentine, Brazilian, and Paraguayan institutions. published in Spanish and Portuguese in journals that Western databases historically failed to index. The knowledge exists, but it sits behind a language barrier that works as an information wall. The same structural erasure that buried Asian medicinal plants behind Korean, Japanese, and Chinese for centuries. The same pattern playing out on a different continent with a different plant. This is not conspiracy, this is capital allocation. A plant that grows wild, a tree that produces harvestable leaves for 30 years or longer from a single planting. A crop that requires no patented processing and no proprietary technology. It generates zero recurring revenue for a supplement company, zero for a beverage corporation. The funding goes elsewhere, the marketing goes elsewhere, and 4 cans of energy drinks get sold every year in the United States alone. But here is what no industry can control. Yerba mate is available right now in Latin American grocery stores and online retailers across North America and Europe. A 1 kilogram bag costs between $5 and $15. That single bag provides weeks of daily drinking. Fill a small gourd or any cup 2/3 full with dried yerba mate. Insert a bombilla or use a fine mesh strainer. Heat water to around 160 to 175 degrees Fahrenheit, not boiling. Pour, sip, refill. The first sip hits earthy and vegetal, slightly bitter with a smooth green finish that lingers on the tongue. It tastes nothing like coffee and nothing like tea. It tastes like the forest floor after a warm rain. By the 3rd or 4th refill, the flavor softens and sweetens naturally. Each steep pulls a slightly different profile from the same leaves. The same serving of leaves can be re-steeped 10 to 15 times before the flavor fades. 1 bag, 1 gourd, 1 kettle, weeks of sustained energy for the cost of 2 cans from a gas station cooler. You can also grow yerba mate yourself. It is a subtropical evergreen holly. It thrives outdoors in USDA zones 8 through 11. In cooler climates, it grows as a container plant brought indoors before the first frost. The tree tolerates partial shade because it evolved as an understory species beneath taller forest canopy in Paraguay, Argentina, and southern Brazil. It prefers acidic, well-draining soil and consistent moisture. From seed, germination is slow and unpredictable because the seeds evolved to pass through a bird's digestive system before they will sprout. Scarification or extended cold stratification improves the odds. Soak the seeds in warm water for 24 hours before planting them in a moist peat-based mix. Keep the tray covered in a warm spot and be patient. Germination can take anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Once the seedling reaches 6 inches, transplant it into a larger pot with a mix of peat, perlite, and composted pine bark. The easier path is to buy a small seedling from a specialty nursery. In a large container, expect a manageable shrub reaching 3 to 6 feet. Harvest leaves only after the plant has been established for at least 2 years. Dry them slowly in shade. Toast them lightly over low heat. You now have your own yerba mate from your own soil. 200 million people drink this plant every single day. 196 active compounds in every leaf. 3 stimulants working together in a way no energy drink has ever replicated. An antioxidant profile that exceeds coffee and green tea. A plant that was called the devil's drink by men who then consumed it for the rest of their lives. Domesticated by monks who kept the secret of its germination locked away for over a century. Shut out of global markets by 120 years of collapsed supply chains. And the $25 billion industry selling you synthetic caffeine in aluminum cans has absolutely no interest in you ever learning its name.